All right. Well, we told you we're going to kind of streamline things. We got a lot to cover, and so we're going to start off with the opening prayer is actually going to be the prayer for the offering. So we're going to take the offering during our congregation. So we're going to need everybody to go ahead and stand, and we're going to pray, and then they'll just pass the plates as we're singing. So that'll streamline things quite a bit. So. Oh, and Marlene has a friend who's passed away. She's at the funeral home. So, anyways, that's where she's at. All right. Brother Ted, will you ask God's blessing on our offering, please?
All right, we're going to sing Wonderful Grace of Jesus. Wonderful grace of Jesus, greater than all my sin. How shall my tongue describe it? Where shall its praise begin? Taking away my him God's dear child, purchasing peace and heaven for all eternity, and the wonderful grace of Jesus reaches me. Wonderful the matchless grace of Jesus, deeper than the mighty rolling sea, higher than the mountain, sparkling like a fountain, all sufficient grace for even me, broader than the scope of my transgressions, greater far than all my sin and shame. Oh, magnify the precious name of Jesus, praise his name. Thank you for your singing this evening. You may be seated.
All right, we're going to start with a verse here. I'll go through some brief reminder of some things. And I say brief, but brief as I could be. Psalm 37, we'll read a couple verses there first. Actually, probably about 3 verses or 4. All right, Psalm 37. In one of these services, we're just going to start glancing through the Psalms to see how often the second coming is mentioned. Oh, my soul. Wow. Okay. But here is, of course, the coming of the Lord and the day when God judges the wicked and they're put down and the righteous are exalted and they inherit the land and all these things. It's very evident in this passage. And so God says, don't worry about them. Matter of fact, let's start at verse 1, okay? Psalm 37, verse 1, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. And that ought to ring some bells there for you prophetically. It was the scriptures we've been through before. Now, go to verse number 12. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. Do the wicked plot against the just? It's what the Bible says, okay? And I'm just telling you, people have a very different view of the world than God does. His view's right, okay? There's a lot of verses about these things, but yes, they do. Now, verse 13, because God's looking at that day when he comes and takes over and wipes them out, you understand? The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. God's looking at that and said, ha, ha, you think you're going to do all that? Ha. The wicked have drawn out their sword. They have bent their bow to cast down the poor and the needy and to slay such as be of an upright conversation. Do the wicked hate the poor, the needy, and the upright? They do, okay? And so these ought to be evident to you. Now, I'm going to touch on some things, and then we'll point out some things here that we're fixed to watch and give you a view. And basically, I'll just, spoiler alert, okay? Look, what happened in 2020 was evil and wicked, and we'll try to bring some things to mind maybe the next couple Sundays to just refresh our memories on everything. The very spirit of it, everything that happened, and the who, what, when, why. We showed Satan's program back then, and we showed what he seeks to do. He seeks to enslave, kill, steal, kill, and destroy. We'll try to remind you of all those things. We're going to touch on a couple brief elements here, and then there's some things that people that have partial truth miss. We'll go on that on a Sunday as well. We got a handout for that. We're not going to get to it tonight. But just to refresh your memory, just to touch on these things without going into too much detail, but also qualify some things to make sure you understand where we're coming from. Okay, so because we're to deal with, and what we're going to do is, he's not directly dealing with this thing. I've got a book right there. I'll explain about that in just a little bit. And we'll touch on some verses at the very end, but he also has some solutions for you, which some of this information, I had a little bit of it before, but I never presented it because there was no purpose to it. And now there is. Oh, boy. And so we'll get into that in just a minute. Okay, so look, first of all, this is something I helped put together because I was trying to show some people at work, actually, about some of these truths. They were talking about some of these topics, and I brought these things to bring up to speed. We will show for the scripture that the mystery religion seat of power today is in the Vatican. Now, yes, the mystery religion started with Nimrod in Genesis 10 and 11, and it's continued, and it's the mother of harlots, so there's plenty of offspring over the world, but they all tie together. It will join together under the Antichrist. But the current seat of power is the Vatican. We will show you that it reigns over the kings of the earth. Let us start off by saying that we love Roman Catholics and desire to see them saved, and that's true. And we had, matter of fact, the preachers we had here, we hosted the Pacers Fellowship. Brother Vance, Roman Catholic, read the gospel tract, read Ephesians 2:8-9, for by grace ye saved through faith, and that not of yourselves, and to get the not of works, lest any man should boast. What happened? He got saved. Okay, and also Brother Paponis also was a Roman Catholic, got saved. And the problem is with the religious system, which the Bible identifies. Now, during the Nazi Holocaust, which we told you there's a official concordance between the Vatican and the Nazi Germany, and all of Hitler's officers were Nazis, but there were some nuns, there were some priests that opposed that. Of course, what happened to them? They got killed. Do you understand? The system is the problem. Okay. Now, let me just say, I don't want people to understand me. The best hospital in any area I've lived in that I'm aware of is Memorial Hospital. And if I was sick and I had to go to the hospital, you know what hospital I want to go to? I want to go to Memorial. Okay? What is it? It's a Catholic hospital. Okay? Now, do I want the religion? No. Do I want them praying the rosary every? No. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Okay? So, the problem is with the system that the Bible identifies. And we'll go into some detail a little bit more as we go through some of these details we remind you of during the time. And there's a reason why we're doing this. There are many people in this system which have not known the depths of Satan, Revelation 2, verse 24, and there are people that don't realize what they're in. The time when it looked like the Roman Catholic Church was finished and was going under was during the Philadelphia church age, and those things that he tells of the church come through historically. It's amazing if you ever study that thing in depth. Now, this woman that he talks about, he calls it the whore, the great whore, whatever. In Revelation 17:18, this seat of power is in Rome. And the Bible does identify it, and we'll make a point of this in a second, but he refers to this woman in Proverbs 5, prophetically 7 and 8. They're always associated with death and hell in there. This is interesting. If you notice this, but her end is bitter as one word, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell, and there's that death and hell we mentioned before to you. Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life. Now notice this part. Her ways are immovable, that thou canst not know them. What does that mean? It's changing, it's slithering, it's morphing into something else. And you see a lot of that today. People that are on both sides of the issue, it's crazy. It's an illusion, okay? Her ways are movable. That's something you need to be aware of. And that's one of the things, it's like the reason the Catholic Church has survived all this time is like the same reason that a chameleon survives in a fight with a bear, a lion, and a tiger. It just blends in, you know? And so that's the way she operates. Now, her ways are movable, so she pivoted rather than openly reigning, as in time past, through inquisitions, crusades, burning at the stake, and all these things. She moved to infiltrating intelligence, paramilitary stealth mode, okay? And she still rules and reigns, because the Bible says that that's the city that rules and reigns over the kings of the earth. It's through a different means, and it's more sinister, if you would, because it's not open. And I do say that things in stealth or operating in that way are more dangerous. Matter of fact, think about that. Just think about how Satan operates. Where's the last place you think a young person would go to and have his faith in the Bible overthrown? Bible college. And guess what happens? Yeah, okay? What do Adolf Hitler and all his officers, all mafia bosses, mafiosos, the founder of the CIA, the founder of the FBI, the Rothschilds, the Roosevelts, the Rockefellers, President Biden, President Trump have in common? Of course, Fordham University, President Trump, Jesuit, they all belong to the same church, okay? Of course, no history is accurate without considering the work of the Lord and the work of the devil. I mean, it's just a fact. And there's a bride of Christ, there's a chaste virgin, and then there's the world system, that's a whore. And they're both associated with a city. What city is the bride of Christ associated with? The New Jerusalem, okay? And the one which thou sawest is that great city. That's one of the things I've seen, because the Bible, Jesus said that the church age we're in is blind. Now, some people don't see stuff because they're blind. And if you're blind, God can help you with that. Go to them. But they failed to connect it with the city. They'll say it's just Mr. Religion. No. What does he say? He says, and the city which thou sawest is that great what? City. Meaning there is a location, and when we go through, we'll go through it. There's only one city that fits the description. When God wants to nail something down, he nails it down to where nothing else fits. You understand? You can't force it in that hole. There it is, which reigneth over the kings of the earth, meaning the kings of the earth are ruled by a city. Okay? Now, and then, let's see. And the current seat of power for Mr. Religion is Vatican City in Rome, and it will remain that way until the midpoint of the tribulation period when it returns to Babylon itself, okay? And we don't have time to go into all that. I will remind you of this quote from Charles Spurgeon because it's a good one. Our ancient enemies shall have small belief in our common sense if they imagine that we shall ever be able to trust them after so often beheld the depths of Jesuit cunning and duplicity. That two sides be on both sides of things, and that cunning, that dual nature. The sooner we let certain archbishops and cardinals know that we are aware of their designs and will nothing cooperate with them, the better for us and for our country. Of course, we should be held as bigots, but we can afford to smile at that cry when it comes from the church that invented the Inquisitions. By the way, the office of the Inquisitor is still open. It never closed. No peace with Rome is the motto of reason as well as of religion. And if you've never read church history, you ought to. Of course, just one little thing here. The Roman Catholic Church board is 68 million. How many think 68 million is a lot of people? During the Spanish Inquisition alone, and many Bible-believing Christians, and of course I mentioned the office of the Inquisitor is still open. It is as a history, and if you get any authoritative history, I mean anything that really documents things, any history, I don't care if it's written by a Roman Catholic or whoever it is, the Roman Catholic people will tell you what they've done to people. I'm telling you, read it. Okay? Now we're just going to run through these slides, and we're not going to take time to look at it, but just to remind you, when I say the city that rules and reigns over the kings of the earth, you name one other religious leader that has this kind of contact with people. I'm just telling you. Now this, of course, Mike Pence, he's a good Christian. He was a Roman Catholic, but he's not anymore. There he is meeting with the Pope, and interestingly enough, in January of 2020. That's very interesting. Okay, and of course, you know the First Lady, Catholic, President, Fordham University, Jesuit, his family as well, his daughter, her husband. And of course, Nancy Pelosi, everybody, it's incredible. Of course, you got all these different leaders there, and of course the Soros and those guys. Then the comedians come in there. Of course, we mentioned this before, but this will keep interesting because it gives a total figure here. But about $2 billion a year goes from the Chinese communists to the Vatican every year because they believe in churches. No, they don't. No, they don't. Okay, I'm telling you, it's the city that was raised up kings of the earth. Okay, now jump back to 2020. We pointed this out, and this fingered everything because everything led back to Rome. So you knew what you were dealing with. You're dealing with a satanic operation, okay? Dr. Anthony Fauci, you remember him? Roman Catholic Jesuit. Dr. Robert Redfield, at that time director of the CDC, Roman Catholic Jesuit, talked about the great work the Jesuits had done in reading church history. Boy, some great works. And I told you this is the city that reigns over the kings of the earth. Now, here's everybody that was in any kind of power in any related field during that time had direct ties to Rome. What a coincidence. No, it didn't. Jesus said, put it right here. Now, think about it. When was there a time where there was more confusion for people and needed to know what to do? And God says, here it is. And people are like, I don't see. We don't know what to do. Yeah. Okay. And good old Bill Gates. We'll show you something in a second on those. But these guys are just wonderful people. They believe, and we'll give us some more detail about this just to remind you. Eugenics is purging the evolutionary tree. It was big in this country, still is. Just not as open about it as they used to be. And real popular in Nazi Germany, helping evolution along. The Catholic Church has always embraced Darwinism. Check it out. God used evolution. No, he didn't. And of course, Planned Parenthood, we talked about the ties with that. Okay. And speaking of Bill and Melinda, of course, Melinda Gates is there with the Pope Francis. She is a Roman Catholic. Coincidentally, just so happens that all these people are connected. Just what a coincidence, And there's Bill Clinton with Alex Soros and the Pope, And just a wonderful thing. Now, we're going to point something else about this thing because dealing with vaccines in general, but particularly coming up to the vaccine rollout and those things. Of course, it was exposed during that time that the FDA admitted that when they go to harvest organs that they use, for instance, and I'll show you in a second here, I'll just jump ahead, what they exposed, Pfizer, for instance, used in their research HEK293T, which is human embryonic kidney 293, which means they killed 293 babies before they got to the one they used. And what was revealed is that you have to harvest the organs while the baby's still alive. Okay? Think about that for a second. Well, what they do is they replicate it once who cares? Okay? Look, how many of you are for 293 babies being slaughtered and then harvesting their organs while they're still alive so they can help people live? Is that a communist thing? For the greater good, we're going to kill a lot of you. Look, if there was a little girl and she was out here on the road and fell in a sinkhole, how many paramedics and firefighters and mamas and dads would give their lives to try to save that kid? Willingly offer their life. This is child sacrifice. That's our government, you understand. All government schools are evolutionary, you understand that. They're pro-death. That's what evolution is. Okay? And people get some blinders on with that thing, but that's the way it is. Okay, so part of eugenics, and we'll mention this and just touch on it. We ain't got time to go into detail on it. Humanity, they call it Humanity 2.0, but we referenced that the Vatican hosted a conference on transhumanism in 2019. Of course, Elon Musk, a big proponent of this. This is mixing machine or computers or technology with human beings to help them evolve beyond where they're at. Okay? They're trying to become as gods. That's where they're headed with it. And I'll give you the verses for it and show you some more details about that, just to refresh your memory. And, of course, Pope Francis created this department here that worked directly with this type of thing back in 2016. And I will mention something else. We're going to go talk about this thing, just bringing it up to speed, then we're going to show you some things. Now, key points about a timeline to refresh your memory. Back in January 2020, supposedly the first U.S. case of COVID was confirmed in Washington State. Back in March 2020, they had flattened the curve. You remember that 2 weeks to flatten the curve kind of deal they did. April and May 2020, nationwide lockdowns and all that stuff that went with it. Then November 2020, the first emergency use authorization for COVID-19 vaccines granted to Pfizer. In December 11, 2020, and a week later to Moderna. Okay, so President Trump has said the vaccines, and by the way, don't let Joe Biden take credit for the vaccine. Don't let him take credit for the vaccines because the vaccines were me. And according to Ivanka Trump, fact check, this Moderna NIH vaccine is literally the one that the president, at Real Donald Trump, partnered with Moderna to create January 13th, 2020. How many of you think there's something suspicious with that timeline? Did you know they did a dress rehearsal for this back in 2019? And I don't know, last time I checked, it was still on the internet. They had media and government officials from around the world run through this entire scenario and even dealing with a pandemic, their response, vaccine hesitancy, blah, 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 right down the line. And then left it out on the internet. Well, this is great news. Now, I'll remind you this. We showed you some of these things, and that's going to breeze through it. Okay? A normal vaccine white paper, that accompanies it, looks like that. You see it's got a lot of details and molecule breakdown and all this crazy stuff. The COVID vaccine white paper looks like that. It's really a white paper. It says, intentionally blank. That's the only words on it. Intentionally blank. That's interesting, okay? And we told you about some of the effects from this that's been testified in Congress under oath. Dr. James Thorpe, 43-year veteran OBGYN, has seen up to 9,000 high-risk ultrasounds in 1 year. And he was testifying about the number of stillbirths, and we gave you some information on that. Just incredible. Some others, like Lieutenant Colonel Dr. Teresa Long, United States Army flight surgeon, talk about all these different things that happened after these things with the vaccines, and others testifying about the miscarriages and cancers and neurological conditions, just on and on. It's incredible. And let's just face it, I personally know somebody dropped dead right after they got their shot. I mean, he was driving on his way home, killed him dead as a hammer. And we showed the video, but this is Dr. Michael Yeadon. He was the former vice president and chief science officer for Pfizer. And a couple quotes from him. We played this whole video. The only reasonable explanation, talking about the rolling out vaccines to everybody, the only possible explanation is that they are working on mass depopulation. Of course, this guy's not a saved person. He says, we're standing at the very gates of hell. Okay? And let's not forget to mention it. You got to take these things as stride, because the Bible tells you to fear God, right? God does not give us a spirit of fear, but a power and love and a sound mind. If they do something to my body, guess what? The worst thing, I'm going to heaven. And if I'm living crippled, guess what? The rapture will fix that. Do you understand? So you got to put things in perspective, but still. This is still on my website. If you go to our church website, see pastor's page, I got my own website as well. And I still got this video out there. We ought to look at that again. It's just dynamite. Dr. Zelenko testified and during the rabbinical court about these things, and it's just dynamite stuff. I'll remind you the verse, and this is just an easy way to do it. I can show you tons of verses, but this just says it so directly. But he that sinneth, this is Proverbs 8:36, but he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death. And I'm just telling you, they love death. Now, we're first to get to the video here. There's going to be two clips. Well, actually, there's more than one clip. First one is by Dr. Caesar. He's just a few minutes of him. He's a 39-year anesthesiologist. He put over 12,000 people on ventilators. You see it. I got some notes here for you. So some of the details you'll hear mentioned in here, don't worry, it's on here, so you don't have to write it down. You'll hear what he says, because he's now a pastor. He was 39 years that. Now he's a pastor of a Bible church up in Pennsylvania. And we actually played this. This is back in April 5th, 2020. This is pretty early on, and he was telling us some great information. But we'll just highlight something very specific just to show you the nature of what was going on. And yes, they are trying to depopulate. There's no question about it. And I want you to see that. And then also Dr. Brian Artist, and you notice on your paper, he's a chiropractor, but he's also an excellent researcher. He documents things with good primary sources. Matter of fact, one of those pages on the back, you've got this. On the back, you've got this thing. It's just the sources from his book that we got back there. We got 2 of the books available. Whoever gets them first, can read those and bring them back. But he is excellent at putting primary sources. If you look at those, if you look at the URL, look where it has the .gov, whatever, and .com, you can see what it is, but it's like cdc.gov, that's the CDC, and NIH. He's got primary sources, great information on there. He documents his things very well. He's also a Mormon. He's not even a born-again Christian, but he has a lot more sense than even some Bible-believing preachers on some of these matters. So that's why we're showing some of his stuff here. So we have a couple of different interviews in here, but some things that are very interesting to me. And then I won't mention, he's going to talk about this, but he got some great details in his book. He details this thing, but his father-in-law was basically murdered in the hospital, some of the protocols they did, but this is pre-COVID, so he had a good idea what was happening at that time with that. Then they have calling the shots, who's responsible, and he gets some information on that. And we'll comment on some of these things maybe afterwards, and then we've got some additional information on here as well. And then I'll try to sum up where the book's at, because this won't get to the book, but it gives you some good information in general. And this stuff is documented, and you can believe it or you won't, but when you can look up stuff and see it for yourself straight from the horse's mouth, you know what I mean? It's pretty powerful, okay? So the first thing, it's not even it's going to be, when I join these together, there's no gap in between them. So I'll get a little clip from Dr. Caesar, and I'll say, bam, it jumps to Dr. Artist like seamlessly. So just pay attention to these things, and you're going to get the bottom line, okay, out of this thing from it. But some good information. So, Riley, you might have just the volume on this thing. All right, so here we go.
Lost people have the knowledge of this world, the scholastics of this world, the training of this world. I know, I was one of them for 39 years. Nobody taught me in pre-med or med or postgraduate med or any of the journals I read about God, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the soul, or even people's spirits. All we learned was the evolutionary fairy tale of how people evolve. One of the things you'll hear the bureaucrats tell you all the time, this virus is evolving. Nothing evolves. Everything devolves and corrupts. God said it. He said it withers. Why? Because I'm blowing upon it. I'm not going to allow things without my spirit to live forever. I'm going to blow them out like a candle. And everything on this planet is withering. It's the second law of thermodynamics. The virus does not evolve, it devolves. If COVID-19 changes through mutation, it will change for the worse to it, not to us. It will lose some ability to transcribe and work on our cells. It won't get stronger. Nothing gets stronger. They get weaker. Sorry, but they don't believe that. They believe a lie. They live a lie. They propagate the lie. They tell the lie. They're calling for doctors and nurses to go back to work. I haven't worked in quite a while, and I've been on the line communication with people, maybe wondering if I'd go back because my specialty is ventilators. I put 12,000 people on ventilators in the years I practiced. That was my job. Intensive care, operating room care. You can't do a surgery without someone on a ventilator. They get up and walk away. You have to put them asleep and keep them there, and you got to breathe for them because they're not going to breathe when they're in that deep of a coma that you put them in. This is what I did. They need people who are expert in intubation. That's me. I got called all the time for difficult intubations all over the hospital. So I've been in communication with them, and I've been looking at trying to get up to speed into what they're doing. By about the fourth day, I said to my wife, I'm not going back to work because they're not allowing the doctors to practice medicine. A panel of 19 international one world experts has come up with a policy and procedure for treating coronavirus patients that has to be followed. And the policy makes no sense. I got an ICU nurse right here. If someone's having difficulty, put them in a coma and put them on a ventilator. That's not the first step. Ventilator is the last step. And then even more insane, the policy recommendation is put them in the prone position, face down, on a ventilator. In all the years I put people on ventilators, you never put anyone face down on a ventilator. Now look, granted, I had to do it for burn patients. We had patients that were burned on the back. I was forced during the operation to put them in the prone position, but I had to adjust the table to take the weight off the lungs. You see, the lungs are in the front of the chest. That's why you lay someone down like that. So all the weight is behind and the lung can expand. When you turn it over, all the weight comes down on the lungs. The ventilator tends to blow the lung out and cause problems like pulmonary edema and kill people. You don't do that. So the policies aren't making any sense. So you've got the media lying, you've got the bureaucrats of the WHO and the FDA and the CDC and the NIH, everyone who is a liberal, progressive, global elitist, one-worlder who hates God. I ask you a question, simple question. Has any of you ever visited any of those? Have you been to the World Health Organization? Have you been to the CDC? Have you been to the FDA? Have you been to the NIH? Well, if you go there, you're not going to find Bibles. You're not going to find Christians. As a matter of fact, they have such a fear that they wouldn't even allow a crucifix, which is a Catholic icon, or even a picture of Jesus that the Catholics have with the long flowing hair. They want nothing to do with any type of Jesus or his cross there. Light to them and a cross is like to a vampire. They don't like it. And when you hate God and you reject the spirit of truth, then you drink in the spirit of error, which affects your thinking in every department. It affects how you think medically. It affects how you think statistically.
They killed my father-in-law in a hospital and accountable. So I'm going to call them out on all of their criminality, evilness, and genocide that they are creating. And that just sets the stage for why I'm doing this. I actually was just furious. They murdered my father-in-law in a hospital early February of 2020 over a 9-day period. This is before COVID. It's about 3 weeks before COVID even got to Texas. So there were no restrictions. He just walked himself into a hospital complaining of fever and a headache. They misdiagnosed him with the flu, which he never tested positive for. They tested him with pneumonia the next day, which he never had. It was actually pulmonary edema, which was water in his lungs from causing kidney failure, which they called us on day 3 to let us know he was now in acute kidney failure, which was being caused by a drug they put him on day 1, unbeknownst to us. Day 5, they called us to say he now was in such severe acute kidney failure, he couldn't breathe from the severe pneumonia. So now he was being put on a vent to force air into his lungs, and he was now unconscious or going unconscious. And that's when I went up to the hospital for the first time with my wife to find out what in the world are y'all doing to him. And only to discover that the hospital protocols they were using for a misdiagnosed flu, which he never tested positive for, the drug of choice they used to treat his flu virus was a drug called vancomycin, which is a terrible last resort antibiotic. It's extremely toxic and actually causes acute kidney failure in a high percentage of people. And I knew it the moment I walked in the room and saw it hanging on the IV stand, that this is what they were putting into him from day 1. So I confronted the doctors on day 6 and 7. We made changes to the protocol that I demanded. He actually got better within a 5-hour period. He was breathing on his own. He was conscious, only to find out after we went home on the night of the 6th, after we made these changes, that the hospital administrators contacted the nurses station to call my wife and say they were stopping all of the change protocols that were helping him and reverting back to the previous protocols that was destroying him. And this was, I knew, an attempt to cover up their liability, that I exposed that their protocols were destroying his organs internally and causing him to go unconscious, be put on a vent, when in reality, when we changed the protocols within the same day, he came off the forced air and he was able to breathe on his own and he became conscious. This was a huge alarm for the hospital administrators because I exposed that they were killing him. So the next day I went flying up there to challenge them to go back onto the protocols they had already said the day before they would do, that were making the improvements. And they had me kicked out of the hospital, had escorted me out with security. No longer were going to talk to me, convince my wife's family and the rest of her family to follow and trust the medical doctors versus this chiropractor who was exposing it all, who's been studying health for the last 20 years. Anyway, they denied rights and access and information to consent with me, and we're only going to consent with his wife, who didn't know anything better than what even the patient knew at that time. And over the next 48 hours, they continued the protocols they started with and then convinced the family. 48 hours later, he's doing so poorly, it's time to let him go. We need to put him on palliative care, which is in definition euthanasia. We're going to actually euthanize this person with morphine, and we're going to poison him to death until he dies. And they did. Over a 4.5 hour period, they pumped enough morphine into him to paralyze his diaphragm so he couldn't breathe anymore, stopped his heart from beating. And this is how they killed him. That was the most traumatic thing I'd ever experienced in my whole life. My wife had actually asked me to come up there and be there at the bedside with her while they did this, even though they wouldn't let me talk or assist or take my recommendations anymore. To watch them do this to him over 4 hours was just god awful. And so he died in front of me. I watched him take his last breath and choke on his last ability to breathe. My ginger-like anger just went flying. And 3 months later, amidst all of my anger, depression, grief, I'd never felt like that before in my entire life, man. I'm telling you, it was awful. But 3 months later, in May of 2020, so he dies. We have the funeral. We're able to attend the funeral. COVID hadn't come to Texas yet, but a week later, it gets to Texas. And then all these lockdowns, mandates, whatever, start kicking in. But I'm not paying attention to any of that. And then on my phone one day, there's this alert that comes up from like Apple News on my iPhone, and it says, today is a record day. More people died today in the United States than any other country's total amounts of death in one day for COVID-19. And I was like, wait a minute, why in the world would America be failing its citizens more than any other country during this deadly pandemic? Okay, you have to understand, America still has failed more than any other country worldwide in preventing the deaths of their citizens from COVID-19, supposedly. We have almost 900,000 dead Americans from COVID-19. No other country even has 700,000 dead citizens. America is failing more than all of them still. But in May of 2020, in the very beginning, there was this alert that came up that said, today is a record day of death totals for worldwide. No other countries had more than 1,000 people die in one day, and we had it today in America. And I was like, what? How can America be failing more than all other countries? So I actually went to watch some videos online to find out what were they doing and what were they reporting in hospitals around the country. And at this point in May of 2020, I realized that during the period of my grieving, there's these doctors being interviewed in press conferences in New York over and over and over and over and over. What's happening to these patients in hospitals in New York City? And every single doctor said the same thing. We've never seen a virus do this before, especially a respiratory virus. When we start treating these COVID-19 infected patients, the virus goes from the lungs and it attacks their kidneys and is causing acute kidney failure like we've never seen on days 3, 4, and 5 of treatment. And here in New York, we don't have enough ventilators, one, but we also don't have enough dialysis machines to handle the kidney failure. Now, you have to understand, I watched about 10 of these different interviews. in May of 2020 that were still online on CNN, Fox News, wherever. And the only thing that kept coming up was every single one of these doctors in New York are saying acute kidney failure on day 3, 4, and 5. Well, my father-in-law just 3 months earlier, when he was being treated for another virus called the flu, they called us on day 3 and said he was going into acute kidney failure on day 3. That got worse on day 3, 4, and 5, only to find out the drug they were giving him was causing it from day 1. So immediately I wanted to know, what are they treating patients with? So I went on the cdc.gov's website. I knew it had to be a drug. CDC did not have a recommendation for treatment for COVID-19. They said on their website in May 14th or so, 2020, they said, we've adopted the NIH's protocol. So I went to the NIH's website. I read Dr. Anthony Fauci's name for the first time on a memo to the entire United States of what the only not approved, it was an experimental antiviral drug called remdesivir, is the only drug being authorized to be used in all COVID-19 treated Americans. And in that same little memo, he said no one could use hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine because it damages the heart and causes death in COVID-19 patients in studies around the world. This is what he said. So I wasn't concerned about hydroxychloroquine because he said no one could use it. I was only interested in this drug remdesivir because I was getting alerts on my phone that people were dying more than any other country. So I want to know, well, what do they use it? And the only drug Anthony Fauci was allowing to be used was remdesivir, this new drug I'd never heard of. So he quoted 2 studies, one of which he said supports his decision to select only remdesivir to be used in all hospitals in America for COVID-19 infections. And he said it was proven safe and effective in the Ebola trial in Africa a year earlier. So it was successful against that virus. And then he said 2 months earlier, in March of 2020, the maker of remdesivir, called Gilead, found it to be safe and effective against COVID-19 in a small study of 53 COVID-19 patients. Well, I read the studies, and within 5 minutes of reading the studies, the first study, the only thing I concluded is Anthony Fauci was a liar. I didn't even know who this guy was. All I knew by name on this memo, that he was flat out lying to the American public, because in that study, which is still today on New England Journals of Medicine's website, the Ebola trial lasted 1 year, and it had 4 drugs, experimental drugs, put into the study that they gave to 4 different regions of Africa. And there's a safety board always assigned to every study that has experimental drugs and human trials. And the safety board, all their job is to review the data. Okay, we're giving these people this experimental drug, these people this experimental drug, and they want to see what happens to these people. Are they getting better, worse? Are they dying? Are they getting sick? What is it? And they report back to the funder of the study all the results. Well, in the study, you can look it up right now. The study started in November of 2018. In August of 2019, the safety board said they saw 2 things that they had a problem with 2 of the drugs of the 4 in the study. So they pulled them from the study and didn't let anybody else have them. 1, because they were so ineffective. And number 2, they killed more people than the other 2 drugs were. Remdesivir, they pulled remdesivir from the study because it was the only drug that killed over 50% of the people they gave the drug to. It had a 53% death rate of all they gave it to. The other drug they pulled had a death rate of 49.7% of all of them. So not quite 50%, but they pulled them both anyway and said no one else can get these drugs. And Anthony Fauci, in the memo 5 months later, after the study published in December of 2019, he says it was found to be safe and effective in the Ebola virus trial. And I just clicked the hyperlink to the study he was quoting, only to learn then the safety board said it was the least effective and the most dangerous. So it was not true. Then I went to look at the study to see who funded the study, because I thought maybe Anthony Fauci just got bad advice on remdesivir from the study. Nope. There was only one guy that funded the whole study in Africa with remdesivir for Ebola patients, and it was Anthony Fauci. So I knew he was outright lying, and he chose the drug that was the most deadly in that trial on purpose. Then I read the second study in the memo in May 2020, which was referencing the Gilead study 2 months earlier. And I wanted to read its conclusions. Sure enough, they gave remdesivir for 10 days to 53 COVID-19 patients, and then they published their findings. 31%, they concluded, 31% of everyone they gave that drug to for 5 to 10 days, experienced multiple organ failure, acute kidney failure, ding, ding. This is what the New York doctors were saying in their interviews: acute kidney failure, septic shock, and hypotension. And then 8% had to be taken off the drug because their kidneys died and needed kidney transplants. This is how toxic that drug was. So immediately, I knew Anthony Fauci had selected a drug even more toxic than the one that was being given to my father-in-law that was going to kill a whole bunch of people in hospitals in America. And he was going to lie to all of you and tell you they were all dying from a viral infection when instead they were actually being poisoned to death. And then he was going to lie to you and say they died of COVID-19 infection when in fact it was remdesivir poisoning. And then he was going to take those death totals, project them into the media, and he was going to try to sell all of you on getting a vaccine in the future. This is what I knew from my experiences clinically over the last 20 years and my studies about vaccines and how the CDC uses data, skews data, manipulates data to get you convinced you need a flu shot every year. They're lying to you every year about flu deaths, by the way, and they have for 20 years I'm aware of, just to sell you the idea that flu's scary. Come get our flu vaccines that we own the patents on. It's disgusting. Anyway, so I actually hired a publicist. This is me all by myself at home, just angry that they killed my father-in-law, got away with it at this point. And now this Anthony Fauci guy, who I did not know, is lying to the entire world, telling Americans to use this one and only drug proven safe and effective when in fact the quoted reference studies did not prove that it was safe and effective. He's lying to all of you. So I hired a publicist out of Washington, D.C. and I said, put me in the media everywhere you can. And I did it for like 3 months. And I was like 25 to 30 interviews every week for 3 months. And I was just trying to warn as many people as possible. And at the end of 3 months, I stopped paying her and I said, okay, I'm done. Thank you. My conscience is clear. The warning's out there. And that was it. I was just doing it by myself from home. In fact, if anybody watches any of those interviews from like March through like June, July, I was all by myself at my house, just talking nonstop on every interview. I had no idea, man. I had no idea that these interviews were actually being projected around the world and they were getting the attention of attorneys out of Germany like Dr. Rainier Fulmick. I had no idea that there were individuals who were then going to call me and say, can we hold a deposition of you to provide information about Anthony Fauci, the documents, remdesivir studies, the FDA vaccines, which I started talking about early in that summer because I knew some of the stuff that they were already aware of was going to happen. And so I just shared all that stuff with Dr. Rainier Fulmick and his group in Germany for an hour and a half and digitally from my home. And then he took that information and now has that as a part of documentation to conduct the next Nuremberg 2.0 trials that have started in Poland. Also filing criminal charges against the UK and Parliament in the UK, the MHRA, which is like the English's FDA. I was asked like a couple weeks later to testify to the King's Court in Parliament in the UK about remdesivir and midazolam and other drugs being used in England. I had no idea that it was going to be like this. There's just been a huge reception. And then I had no idea either that all these medical professionals were going to start reaching out to me, wanting me to continue to champion on their behalf, to project to the American public and the worldwide public that the hospital protocols are not safe and effective, but early treatment is always better that they're trying to censor. So I took that on and said, sure, I'll do it. And a lot of them have said that there's not very many people that can articulate things as well as I can. And there's a few of us that are doing it nonstop. But regardless of the reason, it has been a pretty amazing reception. And then a collaboration of individuals from scientists, attorneys, medical professionals around the world who have reached out to me and asked me to collaborate with them to help them on this front, which is all of you worldwide are being lied to. We're fast forwarded now since May of 2020. This drug's been the only drug used since March of 2020. 900,000 Americans are dead. It's the only drug. We are the only country that has used remdesivir this whole time. It's the only reason why we have more deaths than anybody else. Now, January 21st, 2022, just like 12 days ago, our FDA of the United States of America decides they're going to issue an extension on the emergency use authorization for remdesivir. Now what they did is they decided to tell the world, this is not a joke, January 21st, now remdesivir, this extremely toxic drug that causes acute kidney failure, liver failure, in October of 2021, just 3 months ago, was published by the Cardiovascular Toxicology Journal. They said remdesivir is proven to kill heart cells and damage heart and causes cardiac arrest. They published that. Now, just January 21st, the FDA updates their emergency use authorization for this toxic drug. Now remdesivir, young man, is allowed to be given to all newborns 7 pounds and heavier in all age groups in between. So remdesivir now, they're now taking people who give birth in hospitals, they're taking your babies to the nursery, cotton swabbing their nose and throat, PCR testing them, and if it comes back COVID-19 positive, the hospitals are being told the only drug you can use for pediatric age patients is remdesivir. So in the NICU or in the nursery, they're going to inject a little needle into your baby's arms or in their foot, and they're going to start pumping remdesivir into your baby. And all of you parents now are warned they shouldn't be ever, you should never consent to allow them to do that. And you should voice it, write it, make sure they do not do that to your kid. Tell them you do not consent to having PCR tests done or remdesivir being given to your kids, because the FDA right now says there are no alternative drugs approved to treat pediatrics for COVID-19, only remdesivir. That's it, as of January 21st. And now they're taking remdesivir out of hospitals per this January 21st emergency use authorization. Now they're going to actually send it to pharmacies outside of hospitals who actually provide drugs to nursing homes, because all nursing homes in America can now use remdesivir and all the elderly in their nursing homes. And this drug is extremely toxic, dangerous. And so my warning to all of you is continue to refuse and do not consent to remdesivir. To help you remember how to pronounce it, Dr. Ryan Cole, who's a good buddy of mine now, we've done a lot of events together. Dr. Ryan Cole walked up to me and said, Dr. Ardis, tell all your audiences and the host of everything you interview, make sure it's easy for them to remember the name of remdesivir. Tell them to pronounce it, run, death is near. So run, death is near, remdesivir. If you can't remember the name, just remember run, death is near is the name of the drug. I give Dr. Ryan Cole all the credit on that. So avoid it like the plague. That's number one. This is flat out genocide. And in fact, when senators and legislators and audiences around the country go, Dr. Ardis, why would they do this? I don't understand. Why would they do this? Not go, it's obviously genocide. There's no other reason. There's nothing here that says we love you people. We care about you. We're only going to provide these things because we love you. There's no love projected out of these mandates. No projections of love or concern about your health or safety with these emergency use authorizations for remdesivir in kids, these shots in kids. The FDA on February 15th in about 11 days is going to vote to give these shots to 6-month-olds to 5-year-olds because they love them. Yeah, right. They don't love them. All right. So I'll just tell you, people have started to ask me, well, who's behind all this? Why do you think that they would be so evil? Is Fauci evil? Really? Does he really want to murder people? Joe Biden really want to murder people? Yeah, they do, actually. It's obvious they do. Or they wouldn't be so coercive. They wouldn't be so bullying. They wouldn't be so threatening to take your livelihood from you or to take your ability to travel from you without getting the shots. That's not love. It's not consideration for your life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You can't even pursue happiness if you're dead. So lay off the shots and don't use them. So anyway, I actually think that this is way bigger than our federal health agencies and our president right now and our past president. But I do think they're all being influenced by the same organization that is orchestrating this entire plan. I actually think, and I'm very hopeful that they're not going to win, actually. But I have to tell you, but I am concerned that no one is acknowledging who the real threat is. I actually think, and it's not like I'm just making this up. I'm just going to tell you, as much research as I do, as much looking into individuals and what they're saying, watch what they're saying, and then see who else is also saying the same thing. I actually think the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope Francis, is over this entire thing. And I think he's manipulating, controlling the entire narrative. I think he's got Anthony Fauci in his pocket. I think he's got Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Francis Collins. I think all of them are being controlled by a division of the Roman Catholic Church called the Order of the Jesuits, whose sole mission for the last 200 years I'm aware of, since 1857, they have been plotting to destroy the Constitution of the United States as the one last stronghold of a country that preserves and protects religious freedoms. And I think they've been plotting this whole time in many ways, either through wars, now through famine, now through pandemics of a virus. I think it has been a complete attempt of them to destroy the Constitution of the United States from within, to destroy the borders, to reduce, which is what they've said. We also have to reduce militaries of all countries, demolish all borders of countries so we can create a one world religion with the Pope as the one world leader. And if you are not listening to what Joe Biden said, what Anthony Fauci is saying, what Walensky at the CDC is saying, what Donald Trump is saying, they're all saying the same thing. And they're all doing the same thing. They are pushing for vaccines and then following what the Pope said, that it's important for us. Last month, just so you know, December 2021, the Pope came out and said, who is a Jesuit Pope for the first time in Roman Catholic history, this Jesuit Pope, Pope Francis, said, there's only two things the world needs right now. The world needs to defund all of their militaries and reduce their personnel. And then the second thing the whole world needs is more vaccinations. Well, what is Joe Biden doing? Joe Biden is absolutely showing you, we'll just remove the military from Afghanistan. We will threaten mandates on the military. Who cares if 200,000 of them say they're going to walk off? This is reducing military. This is what he's doing. This is the attempt to do it. He opened up the borders, letting people flood in. It's exactly what the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church have always wanted. So if you don't realize what the religion of Mexico is, who's flooding our borders right now from the south, it is Catholic. In the Catholic doctrines, they have stated that we need to flood America with Catholics. And we need to put Jesuits in position of political power in the government to destroy the Constitution from within. This is since 1857, by the way. Now, Anthony Fauci went to a Jesuit high school and a Jesuit college. So did Joe Biden. He went to Fordham University. So did Donald Trump. He went to Fordham University too, and the University of Pennsylvania, which are both mega Jesuit universities. Francis Collins in 2015, who's Anthony Fauci's boss, was flown to Rome, and Pope Francis actually made him chair over the papacy's science academy of the world in Rome. That's Anthony Fauci's boss. All right. If you don't see the connection and the ties to the Pope and these guys in the Jesuit order, whose whole mission has been since the 1500s with Loyola, who set it up, the Order of the Jesuits, it has been to create a one world religion, a one world government with the Pope at the head. And anyway, that to me is who's in charge, and no one's really acknowledging it. But I absolutely believe if you just listen to what they're saying, and I'll just say it right now, people talk about how much they love Donald Trump and they think he's going to save this country. When they come out, if you haven't listened to him lately, it's been driving me nuts because I voted for him twice and thought he was what I thought he was. I think he's just a part of this whole script that they're being given to create mass confusion and civil war in the country. That's what they're doing. That's what Donald Trump and this guy are doing, Joe Biden and his administration. But when he says no mandates, and that gets people excited here, that we should have no mandates, the mandates on the vaccines are bad. But in the same vein, he says his shots have saved millions of people's lives around the world. That's what he says when we know they haven't. They haven't done that at all. But when he says that, these two things, the vaccines work and no mandates, people get excited about that. And they're like, somebody needs to get to Donald Trump to wake him up about the dangers of the vaccines. He's at least right about the mandates. And I go just like this. Really? Do you not remember someone else said the thing right before he went into office? Joe Biden said, the vaccines work, but we're not going to have any mandates. And then he got in office, and what did he do? Lockdowns, mandates. I mean, that's what he did on all the vaccines. You just have to understand this is a script. They're both saying the same thing. While Donald Trump is not in the position of being the president, I believe he's being told what to say to get people to like him, vote for him. And I absolutely believe that he's been put into a position to discuss these things right now over the last few months because Joe Biden's administration has not been able to get the majority of America to comply. So they had to enact Donald Trump to get the other 50% of the country to comply and go along with the vaccine. So what does he say? He actually says, I got the vaccines and the boosters. And then he shuns people in audiences when they say boo. He's like, oh, no, that's just a fringe group over there booing the boosters. Don't do that. Don't do that. No. This is disgusting. We know these shots are dangerous. Cardiologists, epidemiologists, all know these are dangerous. Pathologists have already confirmed they're super dangerous. They're causing more cancers, heart disease, death among young. This is not saving us. It is horrific. So I would just tell everybody, be leery of those who say, anybody who says these shots are safe and effective, and you should get them, you should avoid and not trust them. Because number one, they're either not looking at the science or the data, refuse to, or they're flat out lying to you. So there's really no other way around it. So I would trust, and I would say this, many audiences will ask me, why is Donald Trump saying the vaccines work? And why is he saying no to the mandates but the vaccines work? Even when we know now 2 years later they don't, or a year and a half later they don't. So the majority of the power in this world comes from money. And the majority of the money is controlled through what's called the world central banks. The world central banks are actually controlled by the Rothschilds family, which are actually Jesuits. The Rothschilds and the Catholic Church and the Vatican created what's called the Federal Reserve Bank, which dictates all of our currency in this country. So the Federal Reserve Bank, it was created by the Rothschilds, who are also tied to the Vatican and the Catholic Church. They obviously, in my opinion, they are all working together, controlling the George Soroses, the Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, all of them, Francis Collins. They're all in collusion running this whole thing. In 4.5 minutes, I want to tell you, not only is the criminality behind COVID-19 and all the lies that have been told to you been a big deal, someone decided after Stu Peters did an interview of a guy who's in Vietnam and hiding, and he's an investigative journalist, uncovering in China that the CCP has imprisoned these individuals who are innocent. They just created a movement of health and natural wellness, and through Tai Chi exercises and eating well. The CCP saw that as a threat to their country and to pharmaceutical industry, so they actually had them all imprisoned. And now they use them for organ harvesting while they're alive. And they sell those organs to America for organ transplant procedures. Okay? And I'm told I should interview this guy. And I decided, okay, I'm going to interview him. I know we only have a few minutes, but this is what I interviewed him for an hour. You can check it out at thedrartistshow.com. Just did it a month and a half ago or so. He doesn't know anything about my views about who's running this whole thing. He has no idea. And that's not what this is about. But he gets into the fact that not only does the CCP harvest organs of innocent, healthy people and sell them, cuts them open while they're alive in these prisons, sells their organs to Americans. The CCP mafia is going to the southern bordered countries, and they're buying 30 to 60,000 children a year from those countries. And those countries provide the children already saran wrapped to a board, loaded up in tractor trailers, stacked up on top of each other, and they're driving these newborns, adolescents, and children into China to be sex trafficked. And he personally has been in the trucks, raided those trucks, and cut the saran wrap off these children to rescue them out of these trailers. Okay? He's been doing this for 21 years. In the end of this interview, he says, Dr. Ardis, you have no idea the power and reach of the CCP. And I said, oh, really? How powerful is the Chinese Communist Party? This is what he says, unsolicited. He goes, Dr. Ardis, not only do they control the majority of manufacturing and the money and the debt that's on the United States of America, they actually own the Vatican. And I said, oh, really? This is not a joke. I went just like this. Oh, really? What makes you think they own the Vatican? And he goes, they pay them, the Vatican, directly hundreds of millions of dollars every year off of the organ harvested people and the sex trafficking of children in China. And I went just like this. Really? Okay, great. I ended the interview, got off. I didn't say anything to him. I got off the interview, walked into the hall where my producers were, and I went just like this. I looked at my producers and I said, did you hear what that guy just said? And he goes, I did. He said, the CCP even owns the Vatican. And I said, the CCP doesn't own the Vatican. Do you know how a drug cartel works? The drug cartel provides a product. Those people sell the product, and then they owe money back to the cartel for protection and the product. The Vatican owns the CCP. They are providing sex trafficking. They're providing organ harvesting money, and they are keeping it all covered up and denying media coverage. They are censoring it all and keeping it protected. And the CCP owes them money for the product and the protection. This is how a cartel works. The Catholic Church owns them. And I looked at them and I went, what in the world would the Communist Party of China want with the Vatican? They don't even believe in Catholicism, supposedly. Why would they want the Vatican? They don't. They owe them. So I actually believe the Vatican is actually controlling this whole thing. I think the Roman Empire has never given up on a whole world dominant empire, and they're just doing it through religion. I think. Anyway, so and to talk to this guy who was in Vietnam talking about sex trafficking of children. I don't know if you guys are aware. Can you think of one other religion? I mean, like a worldwide religion that has been covering up pedophilia and okay with it? They take their fathers and priests in different dioceses and congregations who they find out are actually raping, molesting boys, children, and they will pluck them from there and just move them to another facility or another state or another country and let them continue. They have been totally okay covering up sex trafficking of children, abortions of nuns that priests are actually impregnating and murdering those kids. It's ridiculous. So I actually think there is nothing more evil or corrupt than this religious organization, and they don't care about life. They obviously don't care to protect the lives of children in their own congregations that they are overseeing and representing. And how many of these priests have ever ended up in prison? I don't know any of them. In fact, I know more court cases where the Vatican got them off than I do of any of them being prosecuted. So I just think this is an organization you should watch out for. Watch what the Pope says and see if it is in line with what everyone in your country is articulating. And just see. I actually think we're missing the target, like we're missing the awareness.
So we're going to be taking questions. The entire show today is just taking questions from the audience. So if you're watching on Rumble or Twitter or any of the platforms you're watching, it's not going to be on YouTube because the vaccines are killing people, right? I'd be banned instantly from YouTube just for saying that. But if you're watching on Rumble, especially, we're going to have a really active chat. If you have questions, drop them into the chat. I will do my best to get to them. We've already got a ton of questions that came in before the show that we're going to start with. And let's just go ahead and dive in. So Dr. Ars, let me pull up, gosh, I got so many questions already. Let me go, if this is my first question I want to start with, which I think is a really important one. This is from Dottie over on Telegram. So big shout out to Dottie. Thank you for this question. So Dottie, she says, what can I take instead of the poisoned blood pressure pills I'm taking? The doctor said not to stop them as I could have a stroke or heart attack.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Dottie, thank you for asking about high blood pressure. I will tell you, if you haven't followed him yet, Dr. Thomas E. Levy is a 45-year board-certified cardiologist, and he's got multiple books that you should consider purchasing, and you can learn more about him. Look up Dr. Thomas E. Levy, and it's a cardiologist, and all he does is write books on how to cure cardiovascular diseases, prevent diseases, all naturally without drugs. In fact, at the drartisshow.com about 3 years ago, him and I collaborated and created a what's called 10 for 10, a 10-minute video with a PDF. It's for $10. And we actually outline for you on drugs, off of prescription drugs, what are your next steps to actually reverse high blood pressure. But a couple key principles here I want you to understand. And it's very important for your audiences. Seth Holhouse made a very important point at the very beginning of this presentation. He said, we have been lied to so many times in medicine. One of the greatest lies ever told to humanity by medicine is that salt is bad for you and that salt increases your blood pressure. It does not, and you have been lied to. Now, I have to say this because, for example, let me set the stage here, Seth, and I will not take so long to answer all these questions, but this is a big one. High blood pressure drugs are a massive, massive boon for the big pharma drug complex. They sell tons of these drugs. In 2016, Tel Aviv University, Seth, decided to do the largest research study ever on high blood pressure. 2016, it's only 8 years ago. They actually followed 500,000 people in 49 different countries for 10 years. The people with the best average blood pressure were those who ate the most salt in their diet every day. So let me give you some perspective. The FDA tells you that you can only eat up to like 2,400 milligrams of salt a day. The American Heart Association says it's only 1,100 to 1,200 milligrams a day. That's half. So you have the FDA saying 22 to 2,400. The American Medical Association and the American Heart Association is telling you half of that is only good. Well, the truth is Tel Aviv, Israel figured out that the actual best amount of salt that you should be consuming every day to keep your blood pressure normal is between 6,000 milligrams and 9,000 milligrams of salt. Now, just for perspective, that's 8 times more than the American Heart Association tells you should eat every day. And that is 4 times more than the FDA tells you that you should take. However, if you, Dottie, had a heart attack today or had stroke level high blood pressure and you called an ambulance, do you know what the first thing there is they're going to inject inside of you when you get in the ambulance and they take you to the hospital?
Saline.
Without ever talking to a doctor, they're going to inject you with saline. You know what saline is? 9,000 milligrams of salt in that bag of water. And if you have extremely high blood pressure at stroke level, Seth, did you know they do 2 of those bags in what they call a push? They will push 18,000 milligrams of salt inside your body, and guess what happens? Your blood pressure starts coming down. Now, the truth is, every single patient on earth who is considered sick for any reason or dehydrated and goes for any reason to a hospital, every patient only has one thing in common. Just close your eyes and think about it. Every disease, every condition, they all have only one thing in common being pumped into their body the whole time they're in there. Salt, 24/7, 9,000 milligrams per bag, and they're charging you. They only are charged $2 a bag to buy those bags of salt. Do you know what the average adult charge for one bag is in a hospital in America? $893 they bill your insurance for a $2 bag of salt water. Children are charged $400 by their insurance. It's the largest racket in medicine. So if you would please consider increasing your salt intake and potassium intake. Your kidneys are what release water out of the body. The kidneys operate with what are called sodium potassium pumps. What's another word for sodium, Seth? Salt. All right, so you have salt potassium pumps that are required in your kidneys to pump out water. And Seth, what happens is when we start depriving ourselves of salt because the world tells us to eat less salt and our doctors all tell us to eat less salt, need a low sodium diet, our kidneys don't get the salt they need, and we will start retaining water. And as we retain water, there's now increased pressure on our blood vessels. And guess what the majority of Americans are put on? Diuretics like Lasix to make you pee. Do you know what Lasix is? It's patented salt. Hydrochlorothiazide. It's patented salt. HCTZ. This is your diuretics. So they want you to swallow their prescription salt in a tablet form. They don't want you eating it in your food. It's one of the greatest lies in medicine. So just so you know, that's number 1. Number 2, you need to be on magnesium. Magnesium is the number 1 thing that lowers blood pressure, period. What's the amount of magnesium? And anybody that has high blood pressure, you're deficient in it.
You have this on
you
your
take
paper.
your
Your
weight
handout
in
has
pounds.
this. You don't have to write it down. It's
Man
on your
in
paper.
America,
We passed
woman
out.
in America, take your weight in pounds, divide it by 2.2 pounds. That number, your weight divided by 2.2, you multiply that times 10.6 milligrams, and that's how much magnesium you need to be eating, swallowing every day for the rest of your life.
Wow.
And it
It's
relaxes
simple.
your blood vessels and lowers your blood pressure. Yep.
But also to help you sleep. And that's so like we take it almost every night. We take Calm, and even we've with my daughter, she had some constipation issues, and the doctor's like, "Oh, I'll put her on Miralax," and it's like you look into Miralax, and it's treacherous what it does. And we found that give her a little bit of magnesium and fixes everything. It's great, and she sleeps.
Check this out. This is for Dottie. I hope you're listening, Dottie, still. All right. So you learned in our elementary schools, or if you were homeschooled, you should have learned at some point from your science teacher the periodic table of elements. And I'm setting the stage for the rest of these questions because in the periodic table of elements, that big cool chart we all learned and looked at and had to memorize at some point, on that chart, we learned that the periodic table of elements are all the elements on Earth that are required for life to be sustained. Hey, Seth, guess what's on that chart called the periodic table of elements? Magnesium and salt. Magnesium is on the left column. You'll see it second to the left. You'll see magnesium, Mg. And you will find salt on there. Salt's actual symbol is Na, and it's in the first column. Sodium, right there, Na. So sodium and magnesium are required elements for your body to live. What else do you find on there? Calcium, iodine, hydrogen, oxygen. I mean, you find all these things that are required for life. So as we go along, you're going to see manganese, cobalt. You're going to see all kinds of minerals. These are the things that make up life, and your body requires them. You know what's not on this list? Lasix, Advil, Tylenol, COVID-19 mRNA vaccines. Those aren't required for life. They're not on the periodic table of elements. These are the elements in the dirt that gets drawn up into the plants you eat or supposed to be eating. And if you're not going to eat the plants, the fruits and the vegetables, you have to supplement these minerals on this table every day because your body requires it. The less of those you put into your body, the sicker you're going to be and the more diseases you have, period. So this is why we talk about supplements so much, just so you know.
Perfect. Great answer and concise, which is great because we've got so many questions to get through. So,
That was just a setup for the future. Here we go.
okay. So I've got a handful of questions about Ozempic. And I've got Jackson asking what's the truth about Ozempic on Rumble. I've got Wayne Daniels Sr. saying, does Ozempic cause depression? I've got EMS 5781 on Rumble asking, please explain the prolifically pushed Ozempic. What's your understanding about Ozempic? So
The
give
articles
us
he's
just-
going to
I
reference
know
are on the
that,
back table, so
we
you can look
do
at
a
them.
whole
That he
episode
references
just
in
on
this
Ozempic. And
answer.
actually, we should do another episode just on Ozempic. Give us just like the quick, when someone says, hey, Brian, is it good? All the celebrities are doing it. They're talking about on the morning shows. Do the benefits outweigh the side effects? What's your short and concise response to what's the truth about Ozempic?
This is great. All right. So Seth Holdhouse, pull up an article by Business Insider magazine and type in the title, Ozempic Gila Monster Venom, and pull up the article while I talk. All right. So Ozempic, Wegovy, Majorna, Zepbound, Byetta, Trulicity, these are all the same drugs. They're made from Gila monster lizard venom. And you are being prescribed this drug for life. And you are supposed to inject yourself once a week with these drugs. And this venom from this deadly toxic lizard, which by the way, it's venom, the Smithsonian Institute has said is more toxic and deadly than a Western diamondback snake venom. That venom they call a hunger regulating venom. It's not a hunger regulating venom. It's a paralyzing venom. It actually paralyzes your vagal nerve and doesn't allow your food you just swallowed to go from your stomach into your intestines. So it just sits there and you won't be hungry for a long time. You're just going to be like, man, I feel full, but you're going to keep eating. And then you're eventually going to start throwing up everything you're piling on, everything sitting in your stomach. What's the biggest risk with Gila monster venom? Number one, it has a black box warning on Ozempic, Wegovy, Zepbound, Trulicity, Byetta, you name it. All of them have a black box warning that this Gila monster venom and the venom protein for those interested is called Exendin-4, EXENDIN-4. That's what they isolate from the Gila monster venom and inject inside of you or tell you to inject inside yourself. The black box warning is within 12 to 36 months, you will develop medullary thyroid cancers of all kind. But oncologists around the world, after seeing my interviews about this drug being made from venom, have told me it's not thyroid cancers they're seeing in all their Ozempic patients. It's exploding breast cancer diagnoses in them. You're going to see every form of cancer from these drugs, period. All right, so Ozempic has black box warning. Thyroid cancers, breast cancer. Number two, FDA just added another warning that it causes gastroparesis. Do you know what that is, Seth Holdhouse?
I can try to guess, but what is it?
Paralyzed stomach for years,
That was my
meaning
guess.
you will vomit every day for the rest of your life. And there is a CNN article from last year says hundreds of thousands now have paralyzed stomachs that cannot be reversed for years after stopping Ozempic. And they're losing their jobs, can't take care of their family, they're puking all the time. Look it up, CNN Health, hundreds of thousands, paralyzed stomach, Ozempic, and they go into the whole thing. Oh, it's also
Absolutely
published to cause pancreatitis. Anybody with diabetes, this drug is promoted for diabetes. It is published. It worsens and speeds up diabetic retinopathy. Do you know what that is? You will be blind faster if you use those drugs. So here's one from CNN. This is from last summer. They took blockbuster drugs for weight loss and diabetes. Now their stomachs are paralyzed. Read the very first paragraph in here from a woman named Joanne Knight. I've reviewed this article many times. Read it out loud for the audiences. And the second paragraph quote.
So Joanne Knight says, I wish I never touched it. I wish I'd never heard of it in my life, said Knight. The medicine made my life hell, so much hell. It has cost me money. It cost me stress. It cost me days and nights and trips with my family. It cost me a lot. It's not worth it. The price is too high. Even now, being off the medicine for almost a year, I'm still having a lot of the problems. She said she was at urgent care recently. After vomiting so much, she became dehydrated. Emily Wright, 38, teacher in Toronto, started taking Ozempic in 2018. Over a year, she lost 80 pounds, which she's been able to keep off. But Wright said she now vomits so frequently, she's had to take a leave of absence from her job. Man.
And this is the last thing I want to say. Oprah Winfrey goes in and out of the hospitals nonstop since her debut back on TV promoting Ozempic. Guess what she's on? Ozempic. All of her dehydration, vomiting, nausea has been blamed on food poisoning. No. Those are Ozempic symptoms, and we all know it. And she was paid a ton of money by Novo Nordisk, who makes that drug. Seth Holhouse, did you know that Ozempic made by a Denmark company called Novo Nordisk? Do you know that no country in Europe has approved Ozempic to be given to any of their citizens? Only America is buying it. And do you know that in 5 years since our FDA approved it, they have earned $2.21 trillion in sales from Ozempic, Gila Monster Venom drugs, just so you know. Ask your doctor. Okay, so this is a question and answer. I'm going to ask you all a question. Ask your doctor if you're diabetic and overweight because he believes you are Gila Monster Venom deficient.
Gosh, so what would you say to Linda M66, who says in Rumble, she goes, I am starting my second month. I've lost 12 pounds, but my inches are coming off. And she says, I'm learning so much about heavy metal toxicity. Yep.
Are you asking about Ozempic? It's in her second month, right?
Yeah, looks like it. Yeah. Yep.
All right, so this would be my recommendation in general. Nobody is overweight and diabetic, which is all the reasons they promote these drugs, because they have a venom deficiency. And the truth is, you should be asking yourself, anybody who's on Ozempic, even if you're seeing short-term benefits, you should be asking yourself, why didn't my medical doctor tell me I was injecting venom inside of me? They didn't tell you that. You know what they did tell you? They told you this was a GLP-1 drug. Would it shock you to know there's no GLP-1 in it? GLP-1, by the way, audiences, is a hormone our intestines and our blood vessels release when we eat foods that have fat in them. When this venom you inject it inside of your body goes circulating through your blood vessels and into your intestines, it will signal the body to release something called GLP-1 hormone. And then your body, whenever GLP-1 hormone is released, which breaks down blood sugar, GLP-1, your body, in order to make sure GLP-1 doesn't get out of hand and lower your blood sugar to zero, it has this inhibiting enzyme called DPP, dipeptidyl peptidase. And it breaks down GLP-1 in about 2 minutes from the time your body releases it to keep you from going into a diabetic coma when your blood sugar drops too much. Well, the venom of the Gila monster is not destroyed by this DPP enzyme in our body. So it just keeps circulating in your body and signaling more GLP-1 hormone to be released and creating pancreatitis, cancer along the way, and paralyzed stomachs and vomiting. I would never, ever recommend anybody continue that drug. You stop it immediately. And just so you know, if you're interested, there are certain supplements and foods that do the exact same thing Gila Monster Venom does. And I will tell you what those are. Did you know that avocado oil and butter release GLP-1 hormone more than anything else?
Really?
So you should eat more fat and your body will release more GLP-1 hormone. Did you know that there's a herb called gugu lipid extract, which is a known DPP inhibitor, just like the Gila Monster Venom? And you could supplement 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams every single day. Make sure you're eating more fat. This is why keto works. Eat more fat. Take your gugu lipid resin extract. It's an herbal supplement. You take that every day, 3 meals a day, and you will see improvements. There's also an herb called Negarinin, Negarinin, that also has that same potential. And I would recommend 500 milligrams each meal. It will do the exact same thing without the Gila Monster Venom.
There we go. Well,
Okay, there's actually a little bit more, but I'm going to cut it short. I will mention this on this handout we hand out. Of course, there's the documentation about where this is from, the interviews. Also, this I always knew about salt. They weren't right because Jesus said salt is good. He said it more than once. Okay, Is salt good or bad? Well, Jesus says salt's good, so who am I going to believe? I'm just telling. But it was great the way he referenced it and made that clear. Okay. Also, I would point this out because he's talking about, and you didn't get to the point where he just referenced in there a little bit about transhumanism, so we got notes on there. And of course, talk about the Roman Catholic Church, but they're not trying to reduce military as much as they're trying to control it. Okay, that's their goal in game is to run everything, which the Bible says they do. But I thought there was some interesting things he had to say about that. Also, some vitamin recommendation he goes on to recommend just daily. You've got magnesium. There's the formula he gave for how much for that. This is what he gives for it. You can take it if you want to. I mean, but I'm just telling you, what he recommends: vitamin C, psyllium, and actually nicotine. Do you remember when Bill Clinton was trying to go after the nicotine on the tobacco companies? Remember that? And I thought it was a little strange. Bill Clinton's character. I was like, this is really odd. Well, there's a bunch of stuff they put in the cigarettes and stuff to make it addictive. So they try to say that nicotine's what makes it addictive. And you come to find out nicotine occurs in vegetables like cauliflower, eggplant, potatoes, tomatoes. And it actually inhibits a particular thing and prevents some of these things that happen with COVID and some of these other things. And he's documented this, but he uses like nicotine gum, about 2 milligrams, 10 minutes a day, or you use the patch. He takes a patch and just cuts up like 6 pieces or something like that. He gets all that information, but I just put the gum. And that's very interesting. Something naturally occurring. It's not a drug. They do put like 529 drugs into cigarettes, addictive stuff and bad stuff. But it's interesting that nicotine is not that. And they had to get rid of it because of where they were going. And I'm just going to very quickly reference this, and I wish I had more time to mention this, but I'll go through some more verses here in just a second to close up. But the book on the back table, there was only 2 copies of that. I bought them. Most of the books on the back table I bought, and they're there for your edification. So, you take a read. If I had enough money, I'd buy one, but you can get one if you need to. He's got a book called Moving Beyond the COVID-19 Lies, Restoring Health, Hope, and Humanity. And he documents things, and I looked this up originally, and we've revealed a lot of stuff back during the time. But he said the people that was put over this, these Nobel Prize winning doctors, these 2 doctors that were put over to the development of the vaccine, they are, and if you look at it, any paper they've published from 2009 to 2019, it's all associated with snake venom. Snake venom. And their studies and all this stuff, and he documents this thing. Like I said, he documents things very well, very well. But he has a solution. That's why I'm putting it out there. So they've done this in rats, and they show what happens to them and stuff like that. But they can split the snake venom peptide, and they got these DNA, what's that word, plasmids. They put them in, and they'll connect together and do what it's going to do. But basically, long story short, some of the stuff they've been working on, and by the way, this stuff's been going on for a long time as far as development. But he identifies who developed this technology. The venoms, there's more than one venoms used. So basically, inside of these things, and he documents, is venom. Now think about this thing. In your Bible, and we pointed this out, of course, Brandon Peterson has a book, Signed by the King. God's got his signature through the Bible. It's incredible. Well, guess what? There's a signature of somebody in there, and it's a serpent. Now, corona, he pointed this out early, but corona means crown, right? King, right? The word virus, look at the word virus, it comes from venom. King cobra venom is one of the venoms. And so what he shows you is that all these weird symptoms you're getting that you don't normally get with a respiratory virus, they all are symptoms of snake venom poison. Now, would the devil do that to you? Sure he would. And I'm just going to give you a spoiler. You'll have to read the book. I'm telling you, it's incredible. And like I said, it's well documented. You pull up the CDC article. If you get the online version, the Kindle version, you can touch it and it'll open up the website. And like I said, I originally looked at this, but there's no point in telling because I didn't have any answers to it. They use your gut bacteria, and he names a particular bacteria, because you put something in DNA and it replicates. IBM did this years ago. You put something inside DNA and it copies itself. Well, they put it and it reproduces in your gut and the gut bacteria. So it's releasing venom. Now think about that thing. And he talks about the shots and how they put these things together. But he also talks about how to overcome these things. Of course, the cancers and all this is just crazy. But that book is really, really, really good on that end. And like I said, it's well documented, but it's quite interesting. And I will mention, and I've got, even though there's not books, you can look at that. There's a clear paper, and it's got just the references for the book. There's 58 pages. You can look through it, flip through that, just get an idea of what he's documented there. So these different types of venoms, or what have you, that are like Italians have found, I think, 30-something different toxins, venoms, in people that have had COVID-19 shots and things like this. And he talks about what they are. And most of them will respond just to nicotine itself, which is pretty easy fix on that. There's some of them that will not. So he mentions that, some of the protocol for that, but also he mentions Ozipic, some of these. There's a whole list of things that's made from venom. Matter of fact, if you have an ACE inhibitor for lowering blood pressure, like lisinopril, that's from a viper in Brazil, okay? That's the venom they use for that. And I'm just telling you, it's wild. It's wild. Now, I want to just point this out at the very end of this thing. And like I said, there's just so much to consider. But the basic point is, first of all, don't trust your government to tell you what's right on health. And trust the Bible and anything it says over what anybody else says. And I'm going to read this, and I'm going to close out with some verses here. Because this is, if you notice under the snake venom poison section there at the bottom, the Bible tells us that the serpent was cursed in Genesis 3, verses 1, verses 14 to 15, and that the condition, not just upon Satan, but upon the serpents, that curse continues in the millennial reign of Jesus Christ. You look at the verse, Isaiah 65, verse 25, it tells you that. That's interesting. Now, also in the Song of Moses in Deuteronomy 32, great prophetic song about the second coming and what's leading up to it, the wording is very interesting here, and then also in Job. Job gives you pictures of a Jesus Christ on the cross, picture of that, pictures of the Jew in the tribulation period, and a man in hell. You see those things come through very clearly over and over again in Job. But Deuteronomy 32, verses 32 through 33. For their vine is as the vine of Sodom, and their fields, and the fields of Gomorrah, and their grapes are the grapes of gall, and their clusters are bitter. Their vine is the wine of the poison of dragons and cruel venom of asp. That's interesting. Now, Job 20, verse 12. Through wickedness, though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue, though he spare it and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth, yet this meat in his bowels is turned. It is the gall of asp within him. He has swallowed down riches. He shall vomit them up again. God shall cast them out of his belly. He shall suck the poison of asp. The viper's tongue shall slay him. You start looking at these things about venom. It's quite interesting in the scripture. But I thought that was very interesting as well as far as a tie-in. Now, in some of his things he documents as far as, of course, I take these vitamins, by the way, already. But the things he mentioned, one of the things he mentioned in their solution, and there again, you go by the Word of God. He mentions some extract from what's called wormwood, and I forget what the exact name is, but it's what wormwood. Well, wormwood means something to me because I know my Bible. Okay? There again, it's like, the salt's bad. No, it's not. Okay, I already know something better about that. And it occurs in 8 verses. I'm just going to show it to you just to give you a picture. I would not use, he mentions alternatives to it, and I would use alternatives, to be honest with you. Okay, look. Because there's not a positive mention to it of the Bible. Lest there be any among you that is a man or woman or the family of the tribe of Israel whose heart turned away from the Lord is God to go and serve other gods of these nations, lest they should be among you a root that beareth gall and wormwood. Negative. Of course, talk about that woman, the whore there, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as two-edged sword. Jeremiah 23, verse 15, therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts concerning the prophets, behold, I will feed them with wormwood, and make them drink the water of gall. For from the prophet of Jerusalem is profaneness go forth in all the land. Okay, Lamentations 3:15. He hath filled me with bitterness and had made me drunken with wormwood. Chapter 3, verse 19. Remembering mine affliction and my misery and wormwood and the gall. Amos chapter 5, verse 7. Ye who turn judgment to wormwood and leave off righteousness in the earth. There's an interesting context to those verses. Then, of course, the last place is mentioned is in Revelation chapter 8, verse 11. And the name of the star was called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many of the men died of the waters because they were made bitter. I just would not take it because it's not a positive reference in the whole book on it. But like I said, I do like what he's presenting because he does present you some things that are natural, some things to counteract some of the things that are being done. I do believe that I could prove to you from the Bible that there is a pro-death agenda. Okay, so I'm not surprised, and I can document from the government sources that they have a pro-death agenda. Okay, they want to do that. They want to kill off the old people. They want to decrease the birth rate. There's no question. Okay, so and there again, you can't protect yourself against everything, and don't worry about it. But the fact is, I don't want to intentionally not do something that could help me. And if I got one of these problems, I want to do what I can to get better. Okay, and so we're making you aware of these things. If I ever get time, I'll try to put some of these things out and put the handout about some of the remedies he put out there, put them on the back table. But the book's available. I mean, you get it. You get it Kindle. You get it Audible to read it to you. You get the paperback, and which is what I've done, and I've recommended a few other people to get that. But all these things that the world does is wicked, and we'll give you some more details about some of the stuff that ties into some of the things he said, because when he's speaking, he doesn't know the Bible verses backing up some of the things he's saying, but I do. I'm just telling you. It's incredible. So what he's got, he's got. So it is quite amazing. Now, I'm going to close with this because you want to have your right perspective on things. You're not supposed to fear things. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil shall cast somebody into prison that you may be trying, and you shall have tribulation 10 days, and that applies to something historically that happened to that church in that time period, which is interesting. Be faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So God says, don't even be afraid of death. Don't fear it. And I want to point this out because you shouldn't be afraid of man, okay? All the wicked people, because God's always looking at the day when they're going to get taken care of. So I want you to remind you of this thing. So he starts with the millennium and then jumps back and looks at things and says, what you worried about? Isaiah 51, verse 11. Therefore the redeemed of the Lord shall return, and shall come with singing unto Zion. And how much? And what kind of joy they're going to have? Everlasting joy shall be upon their head. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and mourning shall flee away. Woo! That's really good. Wasn't bring tears to my eyes. This is great. Even I, am he that comforteth you. Who art thou that thou shouldest be afraid of a man that shall die? All the bad actors, they're going to die. They are going to die. They may trick themselves and think, oh, I'll upload my conscience to the computer, or I'll do such and stuff. You're not going to live forever, sorry. A man that shall die, and a son of man which shall be made ass, and there is the prophetic reference again, grass, because God's going to cut them down. Okay? He tells you that over and over again. And when you fear man, what you have forgotten is God. And thou forgettest the Lord thy maker that stretches forth the heavens. Let's see them do that, because he's going to roll back the heavens. Hello. Okay. And laid the foundation of the earth. Try that one. Yeah, you can't do that. And has fear continually every day because of the fury of the oppressor, as if you were ready to destroy. And of course, God's looking at it that day. He says, and where is the fury of the oppressor? Where are these guys? They're gone. No problem. So God says, I got a solution for them. Don't worry about it. But right now, they are there. And I try to tell you this. It's evident that it doesn't matter what party you pick, they all go to the Vatican. Why? Why is the Communist Party involved with? Come on. It's what God said from the beginning. He gave you enough light to know which ends up. And if you have taken an injection, he's got some things to help you get over that. It's good. That's what I like. There's some solutions. If you have, because you get through shedding, he just does it, and he also addresses some of the, because we mentioned these things, and I personally know people that's at the hospitals. One of the girls I taught actually in high school, Bible, she's a nurse in one of the big hospitals in Raleigh. He identifies why they were having trouble with carrying babies full term and all these different things in the book as well, which is interesting. And lays it out. But it's not hard reading. I mean, it may have some technical stuff in there, but it's not hard reading. And it's definitely worth the read because the information is available to you. And I think if something's available to you and it's not hard, you ought to, pay attention to it. And if there's something that's simple that you can do and you don't do it, then you just shot yourself in the foot. Okay? And anybody, we got individual soul liberty. If you want to take a medicine, you want to take a shot, have at it. I'm not going to. You know what I mean? And I will just mention this personal testimony. I think some things do work. I'm only on Claritin D every day because that's the only thing I found to help slow down the fall with my postnasal drip. I found nothing else that could do that. So I'd take it. My blood pressure pill was lisinopril, which I didn't know at the time what it was. And then you remember, this is why I was here. I started getting burned all over. I started having these reactions, and I was burning all over. My skin would turn red. They could see it at work. I was at Chick-fil-A, and it was like I was burning on fire. And so I had to come off of it. Well, I heard that you could take garlic, what's that? Odorless garlic. So what the health food store here for local got some of that. Started taking it, and my blood pressure now is lower on garlic than it was on lisinopril. I talked to a friend I haven't talked to in years. He worked with me at IBM. He said, oh, yeah, I've been taking garlic too, and my blood pressure's down lower than it was on the pills. There's something to that. Some of those things do work for some people, okay? And I always try the natural first, obviously. And I would read this stuff because to me, it's gold for what we've been through, what we've seen, and some of the people that suffered, and some people that continue to suffer with some of these things, because there are some antidotes to avail yourself to. And I would just mention this as well. He mentions in the book, they're doing all kinds of things to try to mess you up. It's just a fact. Okay, I don't think it's possible to avoid all of that stuff, but if you can do your best. I'm not going to liberally do something to harm myself if I can help it. And thank God that ultimately every problem I got is going to be solutionized like that in a moment, in a twinkle of an eye. So praise God for that. The ultimate solution is Jesus Christ. And if you ever have a chance to talk to somebody, always give them the gospel first rather than anything else. Now, if you get a chance to talk about something else, and when I was talking to if I was witness to a Roman Catholic, do you think I would mention all the stuff the Bible says about the Catholic Church? No, I would not. I would witness to them, show them what the Bible says. Now, if they ask about something, I'll sure give them the scripture on it. But we speak wisdom to them that are perfect, the Bible says. We speak wisdom to those that are saved, as it tells you in 1 Corinthians, not to those without. The natural man can't receive all that stuff. But if you're saved, you should be able to receive this stuff. And this is just good stuff to know. And like I said, Dr. Artis, like I said, I've always liked him because he documents the stuff so well, and it makes it easy for you to check up on it, which you should, right? Just like I tell you, when I preach, if you say, hold it, is that the Bible? I'll try to give you the Bible so you know. But you ever wonder, look it up. Look it up. Look it up. And then when you know, you know. Now, some people can choose to believe something they want to or whatever, but things are what they are, okay? And it does kind of fit Satan's plan. Well, we'll kind of wrap things up. I knew it was going to be a little bit longer, but I did want to get those things out there. I did think he has some very interesting things to say. I did want to remind ourselves of some of these things so we know how to apply them in context, even with Dr. Caesar saying 12,000 people he intubated. That's a lot. And for him to tell you this is not the right protocol, they're trying to kill people. I'm just telling you. You just remind you, okay? And we live in a world that's under the devil, and thank God there's coming a day when we'll be under Jesus Christ, and then there's life and everlasting joy. What a difference. We'll sit to the Lord in prayer, and we'll be dismissed this evening. Lord, we do thank you for your word. Thank you for the information that we have from your word that gives us light on everything. And we do thank you for the light that you give us.